The rain fell steadily against the windows of the old research facility as Marcus finished his evening rounds. As a paramedic in the small coastal town, he often checked the abandoned buildings where homeless people sometimes sought shelter. Tonight felt different, though, heavier somehow, as if the very air carried secrets. Walking around the building's edge, Marcus noticed something unusual near the loading dock. What he first thought was discarded fabric turned out to be something far more extraordinary. A young woman lay unconscious against the concrete wall, but she was unlike anyone he had ever seen. Her skin held a faint luminescence, like moonlight captured in flesh, and her hair shimmered with silver threads that seemed to move on their own. She wore torn clothing that resembled a medical gown. An angry red mark circled her wrists and ankles like shackles had recently been removed. Her breathing was shallow and labored, each breath a struggle against pain that ran deeper than physical wounds. Marcus knelt beside her, his training taking over. She was small, almost fragile-looking, but when his fingers touched her wrist to check her pulse, her skin felt warm and somehow alive in a way that defied explanation. Her heartbeat was rapid but steady, and as he examined her more closely, he noticed the scars that covered her arms and neck. These were not accidental injuries. Someone had hurt her deliberately, repeatedly. The thought made his jaw clench with anger, but he pushed the emotion aside to focus on what mattered most, helping her. When he gently brushed her hair away from her face, her eyes fluttered open. They were the most beautiful and haunting eyes he had ever seen. Deep, violet like twilight skies, but filled with such terror that his heart nearly broke. She tried to pull away from him, a soft whimper escaping her lips as she spoke in a language that sounded like music mixed with starlight. Marcus kept his voice soft and calm, the same tone he used with frightened patience. "Hey there, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to help." He showed her his medical badge and emergency kit. Moving slowly so she could see everything he did, her eyes searched his face, looking for signs of deception or cruelty. When she found neither, some of the fear began to fade, replaced by desperate hope. She whispered something in her strange language. Though he couldn't understand the words, the meaning was clear in her expression. She was asking if she was truly safe. Marcus nodded, pulling off his jacket to wrap around her shivering form. "Yes, you're safe now. I promise." As he lifted her gently into his arms, she was lighter than he expected. As if her bones were hollow like a bird's, she curled against his chest, and he could feel her heartbeat gradually slowing as exhaustion claimed her, carrying her to his truck. Marcus made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Instead of taking her to the hospital where there would be questions he couldn't answer, he drove toward his small house on the outskirts of town. Whatever had happened to this mysterious woman, whoever had hurt her, she needed sanctuary more than she needed official intervention. As he glanced down at her peaceful face in the truck's dim light, Marcus felt something stir in his chest that he hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't just compassion or professional duty. It was something deeper, more personal. This broken, beautiful stranger had awakened something in him that he thought had died long ago. Building trust, 3 days passed before she spoke her first word in English. Marcus had set up a comfortable space for her in his guest room, bringing her water, soup, and clean clothes, while respecting her obvious need for space and time to heal. She watched him constantly with those remarkable violet eyes, cataloging his every movement as if trying to determine whether he was friend or foe. Her name, she finally told him, was Zara. The word rolled off her tongue like a gentle breeze, and when Marcus repeated it back to her, she smiled for the first time. The expression transformed her entire face, erasing years of pain and revealing the gentle soul beneath. Marcus worked from home those first few days, taking only emergency calls so he could stay close to Zara. He noticed how she startled at sudden sounds, how she unconsciously rubbed at the scars on her wrists, and how she seemed amazed by the simplest kindnesses. When he brought her a cup of tea, she held it like it was precious beyond measure. Slowly, carefully, they began to communicate. Zara proved to be incredibly intelligent, picking up English words with remarkable speed. Marcus taught her by pointing to objects and speaking their names, while she shared words from her own language in return. Her voice was musical, each syllable carrying subtle harmonies that seemed impossible for human vocal cords to produce. During quiet evenings, Marcus would sit across from her, teaching her card games or showing her books. He noticed how she studied his face when he laughed, as if joy was a foreign concept she was trying to understand. When she finally laughed herself at his terrible attempt to pronounce one of her words, the sound was like silver bells dancing in the wind. One evening, as a thunderstorm raged outside, Zara appeared in his living room doorway. She had been struggling with nightmares, often crying out in her sleep, but tonight was worse. Lightning illuminated her trembling form as she whispered his name. Marcus opened his arms without hesitation, and she ran to him like a frightened child. As he held her on the couch, feeling her gradual relaxation against his chest, he realized their relationship had shifted into something deeper than patient and caregiver. Her trust in him was absolute, and his need to protect her had become the driving force in his life. "Tell me about your world," he whispered into her silver hair as the storm passed. In halting English, mixed with her native tongue, Zara began to paint pictures of crystalline cities that sang in the wind, of forests where the trees bore fruit that glowed like stars, and of people who lived in harmony with the cosmos itself. But as she spoke of beauty, shadows crept into her voice. Not everyone in her world was peaceful. Some sought to conquer and control, to take what belonged to others and bend it to their will. These were the ones who had taken her, who had seen her people's natural empathy and healing abilities as tools to be exploited. Marcus felt her tears against his shirt as she described years of captivity, of being forced to heal the injuries of her captors' enemies so they could be tortured again. Her gift, which should have been used to bring comfort and peace, had been perverted into an instrument of prolonged suffering. "Never again," Marcus whispered fiercely, his arms tightening around her. "I won't let anyone hurt you ever again." The vow seemed to resonate through her entire being. And when she looked up at him, her violet eyes held something new alongside the gratitude and trust. It was love. Fragile and tentative, but unmistakably real. And as Marcus gazed down at her upturned face, he realized the same emotion was growing in his own heart, stronger with each passing moment. The morning sun streamed through Marcus's kitchen window as Zara helped him prepare breakfast. Their movements synchronized like a dance they had been practicing for years instead of weeks. She had grown stronger under his care, the hollow look in her cheeks replaced by healthy color. But the deeper wounds still lingered in the shadows of her eyes as they sat together eating. Zara suddenly grew quiet, staring at her hands with an expression of profound sadness. Marcus reached across the table to cover her fingers with his own, the simple contact sending warmth spreading between them. "Tell me," he said softly. "Whatever it is, you can tell me." Zara's voice was barely a whisper as she began to speak about her past in greater detail. Her planet, she explained, was called the Sarian, a world where her people had evolved beyond the need for violence or conflict. They were healers by nature, able to sense and mend both physical and emotional pain through touch and empathy. "We thought all beings were like us," she said, her accent giving her words a musical quality even in English. "When the Dominion ships came, we welcomed them as guests. We offered to heal their wounded, to share our knowledge of peace." Marcus felt his chest tighten as he realized where this story was heading. The Dominion, as Zara described them, were a militaristic race that conquered worlds not just for resources, but for the unique abilities of their inhabitants. They had seen Zara's people as the perfect slaves, beings who could heal their soldiers and extend their lives indefinitely. "They took the young ones first," Zara continued, her free hand unconsciously tracing the scars on her wrist. "Those of us with the strongest gifts, I was barely grown when they put me in chains. For 5 years, she had been forced to heal the enemies of the Dominion, watching helplessly as her captors tortured beings from dozens of different worlds, then brought them to her to be mended so the torture could continue. Each healing had torn at her soul, using her natural compassion as a weapon against the innocent." Marcus lifted her hand to his lips, pressing gentle kisses to each scar. "You survived," he said, against her skin. "You're here now, and you're free." Zara's eyes filled with tears. But they were different from the tears of pain he had seen before. These were tears of release, of finally being able to share the burden she had carried alone for so long. I escaped during a transport, she explained. There was an accident, a crash. Most of the guards died, and I managed to break free from my restraints. I ran until I couldn't run anymore, till I collapsed where you found me. The vulnerability in her voice broke something open in Marcus's chest. Without thinking, he pulled her onto his lap, holding her close as she wept against his shoulder. Her body fit perfectly against his, as if they had been designed to comfort each other. I was so afraid, she whispered. Afraid they would find me. Afraid I would never feel safe again. But with you, ... double quotes, she pulled back to look at him, her violet eyes shining with unshed tears. With you, I remember what it feels like to be cared for instead of used. Marcus cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. The connection between them crackled with intensity, a pull that went beyond mere attraction to something primal and necessary. When she leaned into his touch, her lips parting slightly. He knew there was no going back. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, as if they were both afraid of breaking something precious. But when Zara responded, her arms winding around his neck and her body melting against his, the kiss deepened into something that spoke of desperate need and profound love. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Zara pressed her forehead against his. I never thought I could feel this way again, she whispered. Never thought I could trust anyone enough to love them. Marcus's response was to kiss her again, pouring all of his promises and protections into the contact. Whatever came next, whatever dangers might still lurk in their future, they would face them together. The threat returns to the peace they had built together shattered on a Tuesday morning when Zara suddenly went rigid during breakfast. Her violet eyes wide with terror as she stared out the kitchen window. Marcus followed her gaze but saw only the normal suburban street. Nothing that should cause such panic. They're here, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I can feel them. Marcus's blood went cold. Over the weeks, Zara had explained that her people could sense the presence of Dominion soldiers. A survival instinct developed during years of captivity. If she said they were here, then their sanctuary had been discovered, moving quickly but calmly. Marcus activated the emergency protocols he had spent sleepless nights planning. He led Zara to the safe room he had constructed in his basement, a hidden space behind false walls where she could remain undetected. Stay here no matter what you hear, he instructed. Pulling weapons from concealed compartments throughout the house? As a paramedic, Marcus wasn't a soldier, but he had grown up hunting and knew how to defend what he loved. Zara caught his arm as he turned to go. They'll kill you, she said, tears streaming down her face. These aren't human soldiers, Marcus. There's something else. Something worse. Marcus cupped her face in his hands, memorizing every detail in case this was their last moment together. I'm not letting them take you, he said firmly. Not now, not ever. Their kiss was fierce and desperate, filled with all the words they might never get to say. When they separated, both were breathing hard, the weight of their love and fear pressing down on them like a physical force. I love you, Zara whispered. The first time she had spoken those words. I love you too, Marcus replied, his voice rough with emotion. That's why I'm going to make sure we have a future together. The first explosion came 20 minutes later, taking out Marcus's front porch with surgical precision. Through his reinforced windows, he could see figures moving with inhuman speed and coordination. The Dominion soldiers were exactly as Zara had described. Tall and angular, with skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, Marcus had positioned himself strategically throughout the house, using his knowledge of the layout to create crossfires and choke points. When the soldiers breached his front door, he was ready. The battle was brief but intense. Marcus managed to take down 2 of the soldiers before a blast of energy knocked him unconscious. When he came to, he was zip-tied to a chair while a figure in elaborate armor stood over him. Human, the figure spoke in accented English. You have something that belongs to us? Return the healer, and your death will be swift. Marcus spat blood and smiled grimly. Go to hell. The commander's response was a backhand that sent stars exploding across Marcus's vision. But even as pain lanced through his skull, he felt a surge of satisfaction. Zara was still hidden, Still safe. Your primitive defiance is admirable, but pointless, the commander continued. We have scanners that can detect the Sarian life signs. We will find her whether you cooperate or not. As if summoned by these words, Zara appeared in the doorway of the living room. Marcus's heart sank, even as it swelled with pride. She had come to save him, just as he had tried to save her. Let him go, Zara said, her voice steady, despite the tears on her cheeks. I'll come with you willingly if you release him. The commander laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You will come with us regardless, healer. But your human's fate depends entirely on how cooperative you choose to be. Marcus watched as Zara walked slowly across the room, each step taking her further away from the freedom they had built together. But there was something different about her posture, something that hadn't been there during her stories of captivity. She was no longer the broken slave they had originally taken. Weeks of love and care had restored not just her body, but her spirit. And as she moved toward the commander, Marcus could see the determination burning in her violet eyes. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. As Zara approached the Dominion commander, she caught Marcus's eye and gave him the slightest nod. In that instant, he understood. During their weeks together, she had been teaching him more than just her language. She had been sharing her people's knowledge, including their ancient healing techniques that could be reversed into something far more dangerous. The commander reached out to grab Zara's arm, but the moment his fingers touched her skin, everything changed. Her natural luminescence flared brilliantly, and the energy that normally flowed outward to heal instead turned inward, seeking the dark places in the commander's mind where cruelty and hatred lived. The effect was instantaneous. The commander screamed and staggered backward, clutching his head as Zara's power burned through the neural pathways that allowed him to cause pain to others. It wasn't killing him, but it was stripping away his capacity for violence. Leaving him as helpless as his victims had been, the remaining soldiers raised their weapons. But Marcus had used the distraction to free himself from his restraints. Years of emergency response training had taught him to work quickly under pressure, and he moved with deadly efficiency. Taking down 2 more soldiers while they were focused on the unexpected display of power from their former captive, Zara herself had changed during the confrontation. The frightened, broken woman who had collapsed outside his home was gone, replaced by someone who had found her strength through love and acceptance. Her violet eyes blazed with an inner fire as she faced her former captors without fear. You made one mistake, she told the writhing commander as he knelt on Marcus's living room floor. You thought breaking our bodies would break our spirits. But love is stronger than chains, and hope burns brighter than your darkness. The last soldier standing fired his weapon, but Zara was ready. Her healing energy formed a barrier around herself and Marcus, deflecting the energy blast back at their attacker. When the light faded, the soldier lay unconscious, his weapon disabled. In the sudden silence that followed, Marcus and Zara stood amid the wreckage of their peaceful life, breathing hard and staring at each other across the battlefield their home had become. Then Zara ran to him, throwing herself into his arms with desperate relief. It's over, Marcus whispered against her hair, holding her tight enough to convince himself she was really there, really safe. They can't hurt you anymore. But Zara pulled back to look at him, her expression serious despite her tears of joy. There will be others, she said. The Dominion doesn't give up easily. We can't stay here. Marcus nodded, having already reached the same conclusion. But as he looked into her eyes, he realized he didn't care where they went, as long as they were together. She had become his whole world, and he would follow her to the ends of the galaxy if necessary. Then we run, he said simply. We find somewhere safe, somewhere we can build a new life together. Zara's response was to kiss him with all the passion and gratitude in her healing heart. When they broke apart, both were smiling through their tears. 3 months later, they stood on the deck of a small fishing boat off the coast of a remote island, watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold and purple. They had new identities, a new life, and most importantly, they had each other. Zara's scars had faded under Marcus's loving care, replaced by the healthy glow of someone who was truly free for the first time in years. And Marcus had discovered that saving her had saved him too, filling the emptiness in his life with purpose and love beyond his wildest dreams. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Zara leaned against his chest, her head fitting perfectly under his chin. "Tell me about tomorrow," she said, their nightly ritual. Marcus smiled, his arms tightening around her. "Tomorrow, we'll wake up together. We'll have breakfast and watch the sunrise. And every day after that, for the rest of our lives. Promise." She whispered. "Promise," he replied, sealing the vow with a gentle kiss. In the distance, alien ships might still be searching for them, but here in their small corner of paradise, they had found something the Dominion could never understand or destroy. They had found love that transcended species and circumstances. A bond forged in healing and strengthened by hope. And as they stood together under the infinite stars, Marcus and Zara knew that their greatest adventure was just beginning.